And some of you need to know that the way Christians tend to portray ourselves religiously, holier than thou, better than everyone else, doesn't work, because what happens is Christians have this proclivity to say, well, the non-Christians are the bad guys and us Christians are the good guys, and immediately one of the non-Christians says, I know a bunch of Christians that are far worse than a bunch of non-Christians, and we have to tap out because that's true. I know some really nasty Christians, and I know some really nice non-Christians. Like, if you let me pick, I don't know, let's say I was going to do a car trip across the country, right? I would not necessarily pick, depending upon who the options were, all Christians. There are certain Christians I would not want in the car. Maybe in the trunk, not in the car. Not in the car. Maybe on the roof rack, not in the car. There are certain non-Christians that I wouldn't mind hanging out with because they're actually pretty nice, pretty gracious, pretty generous, pretty easygoing. It's not that Christians are good people and non-Christians are bad people. It's that everyone's a sinner, and some people live out of the conscience that God has given them, and others fight the conscience that God has given them. And so for the non-Christian, this moral centurion, he's living out of the conscience that God has given him as an image bearer to live a certain kind of life that is not an act of worship, but it does make him a decent neighbor and a good citizen. Some of you would relate to him. You would say, I don't feel like my life is in ruin and I'm suffering, and I don't feel like I am exceedingly religious. I just feel like I'm a pretty decent moral person. Yeah, I believe in God. Why do I need to give my life to Jesus? Because every time I hear about someone becoming a Christian, it's because a boulder fell on their life and they're trapped under it, addiction, death, suffering, poverty, and then they cry out to Jesus in their moment of need, but I don't consider myself to be in that painful place and position of need. Life's going pretty good. There's no crisis. That was this man. Look at his character. He's loving. That's what the religious leaders say. He loves us and our nation. Do you know how loving that is? No one loves religious people. This guy actually loves religious people. That's very loving. And he also loves his servant. Servants didn't have legal rights. They couldn't sue, they couldn't take you to court, they couldn't testify in court, they were treated like animals and property, and he really loves his servant, and he's going above and beyond the call of duty, trying to get Jesus to come and save the life of his servant. That's a very loving man. He's also very generous. The Bible says here that he funded the synagogue, the old covenant equivalent of the church. Now imagine, Marcel, if we were going to start a campus, and I stood up and I said, okay, we're starting a campus, we need you guys all to give generously. And you didn't, because this is Mars Hill. And then what happened was a non-Christian came forward and said, well, how much does it cost to start a Mars Hill campus? We told them, and they wrote a check and said, I'll pay for it. What? You're not a Christian. Yeah, but I love you guys, so I'm here to help. Mind-bending. That was this man, very generous. And some of you would ask, is this all true? Is this real? Is there a town called Capernaum? Was there a place called a synagogue that he actually built? Was a guy really healed in that town? It's all true because the Bible's not just philosophical, it's historical. So let me show this to you. We were in Israel this last summer and took this photo. This is architectural rendering of the synagogue in Capernaum that this man paid for. That's where Jesus preached as well previously in Luke chapter 4, in the building that this guy built. Isn't that crazy? The non-Christian builds the building that Jesus comes and preaches in. Some of you say, well, how do we know it's true? The next slide says, the late 4th century AD, the white synagogue built upon the remains of the quote-unquote synagogue of Jesus. Now here is what it is showing us. The white stones on the top, those are from the 4th century. They're built on the foundation of the dark stones beneath it. Those dark stones beneath were paid for by the centurion. Those are his stones. That's the foundation that he paid to have laid. Isn't that amazing? You can go there to this day, 2,000 years later, and see the foundation of the synagogue that was funded by the non-Christian centurion. Not only did he build it well. This is a very generous man.